The air crackles with an intensity rarely seen in diplomatic circles, a tension that has been building, simmering beneath the surface of international relations. Today, that tension exploded. A warning delivered not through back channels or hushed whispers, but with the force of a thunderclap, is now shaking the very foundations of global power. This isn't just a news story, it's a turning point. We're about to witness a seismic shift in how Africa speaks to the world. Before we dive into the raw, unfiltered truth of what transpired, if you believe in the power of a sovereign Africa, if you stand for voices that refuse to be silenced, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like on this video, and most importantly, tell us in the comments, do you think this defiance was justified or dangerous? Because in the new world rising, silence is no longer an option. The boiling point. For too long, the narrative has been dictated, the terms set, by powers far removed from the African continent. Tensions between African nations and global powers had not just reached a boiling point, they were overflowing. The world watched, perhaps with a sense of familiar detachment, as yet another diplomatic firestorm brewed. But this time, the usual players, the predictable scripts, were utterly shattered. The catalyst? A statement, chilling in its alleged arrogance, attributed to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A warning reportedly issued to unnamed African leaders to stay in line or face consequences. The audacity of it, a veiled threat hanging heavy in the diplomatic atmosphere, sparked immediate and widespread outrage. While Israeli officials scrambled, later claiming the statement was taken out of context, the damage was already done. The words had landed, sharp and unyielding, igniting a spark of indignation that had long smoldered across the continent. A voice unfiltered. But unlike others who might have waited for clarification, for official apologies, or for the slow churn of diplomatic machinery, one leader refused to flinch. Enter Ibrahim Traoré, the young, audacious president of Burkina Faso. He didn't deliberate, he didn't consult, he responded. In a moment that will forever be etched into the annals of African history, Traoré took to live television during a high-level press briefing in Ouagadougou. The room was packed, the cameras rolling, the world watching. He paused, a deliberate, almost theatrical silence descending upon the room. Then he leaned forward, his gaze piercing, direct. He didn't address his people, nor his cabinet, nor some vague international body. He addressed Benjamin Netanyahu by name. The gauntlet thrown. The words that followed were not whispered, they were roared, clear and unburdened by any script. "We are no longer colonies," Traoré declared, his voice resonating with the weight of centuries of struggle. "We are sovereign states." The message was unmistakable, a direct challenge to any lingering colonial mindset. And if any foreign leader believes they can threaten Africa into submission, they are gravely mistaken. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then he turned the volume up, his voice rising with an undeniable force. "Let this be clear to Mr. Netanyahu. Burkina Faso does not answer to Tel Aviv. We do not answer to Washington, and we do not answer to any force that believes it can buy or bomb its way into our soil." The silence that followed was absolute, a collective holding of breath. Traoré continued, his voice now a low, fierce rumble, a war drum echoing across the continent. "If you come for one of us, you come for all of us. Africa is not yours to threaten." It was a chilling, unifying declaration, a line drawn in the sand, signaling that a new era of African defiance had not just begun, but had been unequivocally announced. The words had barely left Ibrahim Traoré's lips, the live broadcast still echoing in the digital ether, when the seismic tremors began. This wasn't a slow-burn news cycle. This was an explosion.
What Netanyahu might have dismissed as the bluster of a regional leader, a mere ripple in the vast ocean of global politics, instantly became a tidal wave. The statement, clipped and shared within minutes, went viral with a ferocity that traditional media struggled to comprehend. It wasn't just a political soundbite, it was a rallying cry, a spark igniting a long-dormant fire. Across social media platforms, especially within the vibrant, interconnected arteries of Pan-African networks, resistance movements, and global human rights groups, Traoré's defiance resonated, with an almost spiritual power. It wasn't just what he said, though the content was revolutionary, it was how he said it. Calm, fierce, and unapologetically direct, his delivery amplified the message, transforming a diplomatic warning into a universal declaration of self-respect. Silence versus solidarity. The contrast was stark, almost jarring. While Israel's foreign ministry predictably declined to comment, retreating into a shroud of diplomatic silence, and Western media outlets barely touched the story, seemingly wary of its implications, or perhaps simply missing its profound significance, a different reality was unfolding across the African continent. Inside the hallowed halls of the African Union, and among the vibrant, often suppressed voices of resistance across Mali, Niger, Guinea, and even as far south as South Africa, Traoré's warning landed not as a mere statement, but as a resounding war drum. In Mali, the formidable Colonel Assimi Goïta, a figure synonymous with national pride, didn't hesitate. He reposted the clip, his action a silent yet thunderous endorsement. In Guinea, President Mamadi Doumbouya issued a statement echoing Traoré's unwavering stance, a clear signal that the spirit of defiance was contagious. Across countless African Telegram groups, WhatsApp chats, and Twitter feeds, hashtags like Africa Will Not Bow and We Stand with Traoré began trending not just as digital markers, but as symbols of a burgeoning collective consciousness. This wasn't merely support, it was a profound, visceral solidarity, an affirmation that Africa was indeed listening, and it was ready to respond. A reckoning forced. What Netanyahu might have seen as a calculated move, a piece of political posturing designed to maintain a fragile status quo, had now triggered an unforeseen regional response. And critically, this response came from leaders who were no longer afraid to defy international pressure, who had tasted the bitter fruit of external manipulation and found it wanting. For them, Traoré's statement was not reckless. It was a long-overdue articulation of a shared sentiment, a necessary eruption of truth. It forced a question, uncomfortable and inconvenient, that the West had assiduously avoided for decades. What if Africa stopped asking permission? What if the continent, rich in resources, history, and human potential, simply decided to chart its own course, free from the shackles of neocolonial influence and patronizing threats? Traoré's words had not just challenged a prime minister, they had challenged an entire global order, daring to imagine a world where African sovereignty was not a polite request, but an unassailable fact. The echo of his declaration reverberated, a promise of a new dawn and a warning that the old ways of power were rapidly losing their grip.
Ibrahim Traoré, the audacious leader of Burkina Faso, had done more than just issue a warning. He had lit a beacon. In the eyes of millions, from the bustling markets of Accra to the quiet villages of the Sahel, he was no longer merely a Burkinabe president. He was becoming something far greater, something profoundly resonant, a living symbol of African defiance. His image, his words, his unflinching posture encapsulated a deep-seated yearning for true liberation, a visceral rejection of foreign interference, of the insidious grip of exploitation, and of the two-faced diplomacy that had long treated the continent as a mere chessboard for external powers. His warning to Netanyahu, therefore, was never just about Israel alone. It was a broader, more sweeping indictment, aimed squarely at every single nation, every single entity that still dared to treat Africa like a pawn on a geopolitical chessboard, a resource to be plundered, or a people to be dictated to. A shifting landscape. The timing of Traoré's declaration was no accident. It was a masterstroke of strategic foresight. The winds of change were already sweeping across the continent, ushering in an undeniable shift in power dynamics. The African Sahel Alliance, a burgeoning force for regional security and self-determination, was growing stronger, its roots deepening with every step towards genuine collaboration. France, the former colonial power, had been forced out of key territories, its long-held influence waning under the relentless pressure of popular demand. Traoré, with the keen eye of a visionary, saw this monumental shift not as a distant possibility, but as an unfolding reality. He envisioned a future, not far off, where African nations would speak, act, and defend their sovereignty on their own terms, unburdened by external mandates or historical subjugation. His message was not just clear, it was a clarion call, resounding with the echoes of ancestral pride. We're not just rising, we're remembering who we are. The final line of his address, delivered without notes, without hesitation, and stripped bare of any diplomatic filters, served as both a challenge and a prophecy. If you think Africa will remain silent while its people are threatened, think again. For some, this audacious pronouncement was simply too bold, too confrontational for the delicate dance of international relations. They recoiled, fearing the repercussions, the potential isolation. But for countless others, for the millions who had endured decades of pressure, of being bribed, threatened, and isolated, it was exactly what they had been waiting to hear. It was the voice of a leader who didn't flinch, who stood tall against the tide, embodying the spirit of a continent awakening. Netanyahu, the recipient of this unprecedented warning, has remained publicly silent. But that silence in itself speaks volumes, a testament to the unexpected weight of Traoré's words. And Traoré? He has already moved on, his gaze fixed on the next battle, relentless in his pursuit of a truly sovereign Africa. This is Traoré Uprising. We don't report for clicks. We report for those who've been silenced, for the truth that demands to be heard. If you believe in the power of a sovereign Africa, if you believe in voices like Traoré's, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Do you think Traoré's warning was justified or dangerous? Like this video. Share it with those who need to hear this message. Your voice counts. Your presence matters. Let them hear us.
Friends, patriots, and truth seekers, prepare yourselves. What you are about to read is not merely a recounting of historical events, but a deep dive into the strategic undercurrents that reshaped the geopolitical landscape in ways few could have predicted. While the world's attention was fixated on the bluster and bombast emanating from Washington, D.C., a quiet revolution was brewing just north of the border. A revolution orchestrated with such precision and foresight that it has left the architects of chaos reeling, their grand designs crumbling before their very eyes. This isn't just a story, it's a revelation. Before we plunge headfirst into this astonishing narrative, a brief moment. If you find yourself captivated by the unraveling of these intricate power plays, if the truth behind the headlines ignites a spark within you, then do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Join our growing community of informed citizens and ensure you never miss another crucial insight. Give this story a like if you believe in the power of strategic brilliance over brute force, and most importantly, comment below with your thoughts, your theories, and your own observations as we dissect this monumental shift. Your engagement fuels the pursuit of truth. Now, let us begin. In an era defined by a singular, unyielding mantra, America first, the global stage became a volatile arena. President Trump, with a finger poised over his Twitter feed and a penchant for unilateral action, embarked on a campaign of economic disruption. His targets were not just distant adversaries, but shockingly, America's closest, most steadfast allies. Threats were tweeted like dictates, and tariffs were slapped down with the blunt force of a sledgehammer, all in the name of a perceived national advantage. The world watched, aghast, as decades of carefully cultivated alliances seemed to unravel with each pronouncement. It was a chaotic, unpredictable ballet of economic coercion, designed, it seemed, to bring every nation to heel under the weight of American might. Yet, amidst this storm of trade wars and diplomatic discord, something truly extraordinary was happening just north of the border. Canada, often perceived as America's polite, unassuming neighbor, was quietly orchestrating what can only be described as the most brilliant diplomatic chess move of the decade. This wasn't a reactive skirmish. It was a meticulously planned, long-game strategy. And the most astonishing part? Most Americans, caught in the whirlwind of daily headlines and presidential pronouncements, never even saw it coming. They were told of victories, of industries being secured, of deficits being corrected, while the true game was being played on a different board entirely. What we are about to reveal transcends the typical trade dispute. This is a calculated economic masterstroke, a strategic pivot that has not only left the Trump administration scrambling for answers, but has also sent shockwaves through global markets, leaving allies questioning the very foundation of American leadership. It has forced the world to confront a profound question. Is the era of American dominance, as we have known it for generations, finally coming to an end? The old relationship, built on the deepening integration of economies and tight security cooperation, was not merely strained, it was, as we will see, fundamentally over. This was Trump's trade war, but Canada was about to show the world that even in an age of bluster, true power lies in strategic foresight and quiet, unwavering resolve.